No, welcome to Death Grow.
I'm Imogen. I'm a houseplant specialist. I've spent 8 years in the industry specialising in houseplants. I've spent 6 years as a plant buyer. So yeah, live and breathe houseplants.
So that's really, really interesting. What is the typical process from, like, how does a houseplant get to your house? What's the basic process?
Longer, I think, than people think. So when you buy your houseplant, you're not the first person to buy your houseplant. It will have been bought and sold many times before then. So it will be bought by the greenhouse, who will have bought it as a tiny little plug, probably from tissue culture or propagation. They'll then grow it onto something of a saleable size, which will then, if you're going through Europe, as 60% of plants and flowers will go through Holland, and that will then be bought at auction by a supplier, and then I would buy it from the supplier, import it into the UK, sell it in a garden centre to hopefully its final owner.
Nice, it's quite a long process.
Long journey.
Do you know the premise of Death Grow?
Kind of.
So it all came about when I was working in trials and breeding, and we had to get rid of our intellectual material that we weren't bringing to market, and we weren't allowed to burn it. So we had to put it in the killing off area, and usually I'm next to a bin of some kind, but today I'm in RHS Malvern in my houseplant studio, and yeah, we're just going to ask some questions relating to death of houseplants and like some more interesting questions that you'll get asked on a regular basis. So, why don't you take some from, have you ever given a plant as a gift knowing it will probably die in their care?
Yeah. I think a lot of the time with orchids, people assume that once it's done flowering, it's dead. And so, yeah, I've given plants like that and thought as soon as that stops flowering, they're going to bin it. If I don't text them and be like, it's still alive.
It's still alive. A lot of people think they just died after they stop flowering.
Yeah, a lot of the time, if I have a customer call up for a dead plant, I have to say, is it dead, or is it just not flowering anymore? And a lot of the time, it's not flowering anymore.
Choose your next question. Have you ever been tempted to buy an expensive rare plant knowing that full well it wasn't worth the hype?
Yes, well, I haven't bought it, but yeah, there are definitely plants on my list that I love. I'm after a variegated pilia at the moment, which I think would look amazing, but I'm not convinced I would give it all the necessary care it needs. I'm very much... You ever heard of like a shoemaker has bad shoes themselves? I'm a bit like that with houseplants. I think I spend so much time working with the houseplants that I need something that takes care of itself. I don't have time for high maintenance plants.
Put it on drip irrigation.
I think they're so pretty, but I don't want to spend that much money and it dies.
That's fair enough. What's your opinion on influencers who give out questionable plant care advice just to get views? Especially having your background in like commercial side of things.
Yeah. As long as there are people having platforms, it will happen. And I think that's where places like garden centres and plant shops are so important. Compared to supermarkets, we have decades of advice for customers. And one thing I find is people bringing in photos of photoshopped plants. So it will be like a purple monstera, and they'll be like, do you sell it? And it's like, well, no, because it doesn't exist. I think you did a post about it.
Yeah, the AI plants.
Yeah,
people
AI
being
plants.
sold AI plants.
Yeah.
They just don't exist.
And there are apps out there that will give wrong advice. I think the whole concept of watering a plant weekly or daily or according to a set schedule is always doomed to fail. Like, I always give the example that I had a monstera that I would water monthly in my old house. Then I moved house and the air was much drier, the flat was much warmer. I had to water weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. And so it really does depend on environment.
That's one. Hey, what's your most dramatic plant-related story? Especially with, I think, the selling side of things.
Yeah, I think I'm going to lean into buying with this one.
Yeah.
I've had quite a few. I think anytime you're doing any type of buying, you will go wrong. So I've bought 100 orchids instead of 10 before. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
They all probably sold though. They're pretty...
Slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky because when you're ordering, particularly from this website, the box for ordering 10 and the box for ordering 100 are so close to each other, and when you hit enter, it's so close to go down and order a trolley. So I've ordered a trolley by mistake, which is like 100 orchids. Taken a swing on plants that just haven't worked and been stuck with them for months. When you get it right, it's amazing. It's very satisfying to buy something and it goes instantly. I had a general manager who would come down to inspect the plants, and he would occasionally look at a new plant and he'd pick it up and buy it, and that was my version of a Paul Hollywood handshake, was getting his approval on something he hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are so many ways to get it wrong, and there are so many new hurdles in the industry. So after Brexit, we had to be quite creative with getting stock. I remember a few years ago calling around bonsai growers, just a list that I found on Google, and calling them up and saying, do you sell wholesale? No. Would you? And trying to find new suppliers that way. So yeah, there's always new obstacles to overcome.
Yeah, but there's some hefty obstacles logistically that are way different from your average collector would have.
It's very interesting, and it's very varied with the obstacles that come up. So I did an example in my talk just now that when the John Lewis advert came out last year, and it was carnivorous plants, and they're out of season and almost impossible at the time to import into the UK. And yet, because of the John Lewis advert, all garden centres wanted them en masse to capitalise on that trend.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely there are issues to adapt to.
If plants have personalities, which one would be your best friend and why?
Ooh, I'm looking around here now. I've always really liked Hoya Linares. I think there's one behind the camera. I think they're so pretty. I think they're so easy to care for. I think the flowers are very nice. So yeah, I think they're a very understated plant. I think they're my favourites.
They're really subtle, aren't they? But add so much to the space.
Yeah, and I think they're just so pretty. They just do their thing. Occasionally you get the little clusters of scented flowers. I just think they're lovely.
Next one. Have you accidentally killed a plant in someone else's care and tried to cover it up?
Yeah. Kind of. I guess working in garden centres, they're not mine, and I have to care for them. So, as I said in my talk, I've kind of bought, sold and cared for plants on a scale most people won't experience. And I've definitely accidentally killed plants. It's a really interesting shift when you get into horticultural retail, is that they stop being plants and they're commodities. And so when I first started, the whole concept of the wastage bin going around and being like, oh, that's dead, it goes in the bin now. That's not saleable, it goes in the bin now, was horrifying. And it took me a while to get that confident to bin plants myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, definitely I've worked in places and accidentally overwatered plants, intended to water them and haven't, dropped them and they've exploded. I was once taking a tray of cacti off the top shelf of a trolley and the tray split into
because they use this really cheap trays. I've had trays split on me before.
Yeah, and they just split down the middle, and then there's mess everywhere, and that's quite hard to cover up when it's just, there's soil, there's plants, they're like under the tables, and it's very hard to cover that up. Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah. Did they get stabbed a little bit?
I did picking them up, but yeah, it was such a mess. And I think it's the same sort of in pubs where you drop a glass and everyone goes, way, it's the same in plants. You hear the tray smash and it's like, oh.
If your plants could speak, which one would yell at you the most and why?
Like I said, I think I probably could take better care of my plants. And I think I get away with, because I know how to care for them, I know how to bring them back from the brink. So I probably could be better at that. So I had a schismatoglottis, you know, the like arching leaves. They're very nice. I think I'm saying it right.
I don't know. I struggle with the Latin.
Yeah.
To be honest. Yeah.
I think just say it confidently. I had a schismatoglottis, and it's a beautiful plant. It's so easy to care for because they are in themselves a water indicator. So once they're thirsty, they droop dramatically, and that was my cue to be like, I'll water it. I think that one would yell at me and be like, just water me regularly, stop going to this extreme, just let me be.
One final question for you before you go. How many plants do you think you've killed in your time? Mine's like, you know, I'm going to close it like about 7,000 just because I've worked in horticulture.
I was going to say, yeah, I think commercially, as part of my job, lots. Like I said, it takes a long time to start viewing them as commodities and starting to bin them when they need binning, because very early in my career I was like, no, it's still got hope, and then once I was like a seasoned horticulturist I was like, no, bin. Yeah. How many have I killed? God, lots, I'd imagine. I don't know how to put a number on it. I've been doing this 8 years.
How many a year would you say?
I don't know. I think I've always been all right at keeping the wastage down in my department. I think it probably... I couldn't give it a number. For my own ones, it's relatively high. I probably kill a few a year just through...
Only a few a year is pretty good.
Yeah, I really do try and limit myself on the ones I bring home. And like I said, my approach is it kind of has to suit my home or it dies and it goes. Yeah, it has to adapt and survive, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's what plants do that quite easily, though. Don't they? Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Do a little
Thank you.
handshake.
Congratulations on
Thank
this.
you so much. And that's been Death Grow.